and I can take this and put it into a different version for you, make it easier. I am super excited to be here today to talk to you about presentation aids. And I think you're going to really like the tips that I'm going to give you today, because the bottom line is that a lot of people are not super good at PowerPoints, or Prezi, or whatever you want to use. We have a tendency to overcomplicate things. I used to tell my college students all the time that PowerPoint was sort of like, all the little cool little applications in PowerPoint was sort of like drugs, right? Like, just because you can get your hands on it doesn't mean you should do it. Same sort of thing when it comes to PowerPoint. Just because you can make it spin around doesn't mean you should. And the key is, when you think about any kind of presentation aid, that its job is to help assist your presentation. Its job is never to be the whole presentation. You're the presentation. Its job is to add value to the presentation that you are doing. Okay. So I'm going to move this over a little bit, see if I can get this over here in full scale for you. And we're going to talk about presentation aids. And every once in a while, I will stop and check in and give you an opportunity to write some questions over on your corner. Again, the chat box is over on the right hand corner. And I don't know if you can see it right here. Yeah, there it is. And so if you have questions along the way, I will kind of rip it, because for some reason I can't see duality in my screen. So I'll talk for a little bit, and then I will come back and I will answer questions along the way. So please, I want this to be interactive. I want to make sure you get what you need out of this presentation. So let's get started. All right. So here we go. Starting right there. Okay, so I chose this particular background when it came to presentation aids, because here's the thing about presentation aids: you have to go against the grain. You can't be doing the same horrible PowerPoints that everyone else is doing and expect to still stand out. So the problem is that many higher ups, what they're really looking for when you're presenting is they just want the content, right? They don't really care about your presentation so much. They are desperate to have those slides that have the content on them. So our tendency is to write all of our slides with the design that someone is going to read these again in the future. But seriously, ask yourself, how often do you go back and read any PowerPoints? Very, very, very rarely. So we're going to talk a little bit about today the idea of designing for reading, someone to be able to read it later on, and then how you take that and cull it down to make it to where it's what you actually present with. Those two things don't necessarily need to be the same thing. Okay. So I'm going to check in real quick just to make sure nobody's having any problems with sound. Everybody looks good right now. And I'm going to give you some examples of some really horrible PowerPoints. Are you ready? Let's start right here. This is a sample of a presentation PowerPoint that I have seen quite frequently. As you can see, number one, it is grainy, and you are constantly drawn to the fact that it's not clear. And then you look at the thousands of grids, and there's arrows going this way and pointing this way and that way, and there's words and words and words and words. And that is just too much. I'm going to explain to you why later on, but it's just too much, right? So that's pretty bad, right? So you've seen these, and I bet you've seen these too. And these are torture, where someone literally writes down, it's almost like they cut and paste from their script that they're writing a presentation for, and then they just cut and paste it directly onto a slide. Dude, nobody can read that. And if they are trying to read that, then here's what's interesting: they're not listening to you. If they're trying to read that, they're not listening to you. So lots and lots of words on a slide is a horrible, horrible idea. Can it get bad? Absolutely, it can. This is just to show you this one was the Afghanistan stability model. So here's our problem. Sometimes people love charts, love graphs. I've learned, in particular, when I run into someone who is a very linear thinker, think engineer, logistics, accounting, they prefer things in a very graph form. Lots of numbers, lots of data. And so the problem is that we have a tendency to overwhelm people with that data. We definitely want to still provide charts because our linear thinkers need that. But if we do something like this craziness here on the screen, you are not going to be making any kind of impact. And what will happen is people, like you're probably doing right now, will spend their whole time trying to figure out what the heck is going on in that slide instead of listening to me. So here's the problem, darlings. We don't want to put ourselves in competition with a PowerPoint slide. It will always win. When you are on a screen and when you're standing up to do a presentation, chances are that it will be bigger, the screen will be bigger than you, and it will be brighter than you. Okay. So the more that we can pull that back, the better off we're going to be. All right. So everybody get these sort of base ideas from the very beginning that if you put yourself in competition with a PowerPoint slide, you will lose. If you get that, you see there's a little emoticon over there in the corner. Give me a little thumbs up emoticon if you want to be all cool. Yeah, thumbs up. Anybody got that idea? Thumbs up, me. You're like, no, lady, I'm driving down the road. All right, I'll just assume the best. Oh, Jane's got it. Thanks, Jane. Okay, so let's move on. The reason why PowerPoints originally had so much power was that it appealed to the visual learner. So here's what we've learned, and especially if you've ever done any kind of pedagogy, where the idea of how to teach, or andragogy is actually what they call teaching adults. You should teach children differently than you teach adults. But regardless, there are three types of learners. There's the visual learner, there's the auditory learner, and there's the kinesthetic learner. And here's the best way I can describe these people. The first one is that they need to see it. So the example that I would have is when I was a professor at UAH, there were certain students where if I didn't write the words on the board as I was going through things, they would lose their mind. You're probably a visual learner right now. If while you're listening to this, you're also screenshotting it over and over again because you want to see this material. Very visual. They usually prefer a lot of photos, interesting colors, and fewer words, but they need to have words there. So PowerPoint originally really, really appealed to this visual learner. The second one is the auditory learner. And this in my college classroom was the student who never took any kind of notes, but was 100% focused on what the people were saying. You know that you're an auditory learner if you're one of those people that for no apparent reason knows every word to every song that comes on the radio, but you can't quite remember why you went into the room next door. Right? But you anytime something's in a pattern, you might even notice when a fan blows if it makes a certain sound. um, there's all kinds of auditory cues. These would be the people that if you had someone that had a whole lot of vocal fillers when they were speaking, if they used a lot of ah, e, that this person would just shut down uh, because it's too much of a distraction for them. It breaks up the flow. The third type of learner is the kinesthetic learner. This is the person who learns by doing. And in most presentations, we don't appeal to this person whatsoever. But what's interesting is they might be the majority of learners that are out there. So the way that I always do this when I'm presenting is I have people raise their hands, or I'll say, "Do you understand that?" Say yes. It will make them participate. And what this does is restart their brains and keeps them engaged. So anytime you do something like a picture this or hold your hand up, like if you agree with this, hold your hand up. Right? Those sort of things are kinesthetic learners. So this is why PowerPoint originally became so interesting, was that the visual learners loved it and it gave them the opportunity to be able to get slides later on. So here's the problem. We've totally abused this thing. Where it was originally intended for good, it is now intended for evil. I can guarantee you that if you are listening to this presentation right now, that you have heard at least one PowerPoint sometime in your life that you thought, oh my goodness, kill me now. Like this is brutal. And a lot of it comes down to public reading. People have a tendency when they have slides to put every word on the slide and then read every word, and that's just miserable for the listener. So here's what's interesting. Why do we keep doing that? Like we go to these presentations and we think these are miserable, but then when it's time for us to give our own presentation, we get up and do the exact same sort of presentation. So just like the fish I was talking about at the very beginning of this entire presentation, you have to swim across the grain. You can't do the same thing everyone else is doing and still stick out. Okay. So we want to still appeal to a visual learner, but we want to do it in the right way. The next problem that you have to understand is that most people are presenting in a style that was basically designed in 87 when PowerPoint first really hits the woohoo, and everybody and their mama starts using it. And people loved at this point that they could make words enter in one at a time, or they could swirl things around, or they could like make a little scarecrow on the side of the PowerPoint, kick its leg over and over again. And people were obsessed with that because here's why: most people don't like presenting. They don't like it. And so if they make their PowerPoint all flashy, what it does is take in their brain, takes the pressure off of them and it puts it on the PowerPoint. So they don't care that the PowerPoint is more interesting and moves around more than they do, because anything to make you not pay attention to them. But this is a horrible idea, because what'll happen is we'll get so obsessed with your weird movement on the side that we will stop listening to you talk altogether. And hopefully, when you're presenting, it's the stuff you're talking about that really, really matters. Okay. So I really want you to think about that. Don't design just because there's an old school style does not mean that it works in a new school environment. For those of you that have listened to my generational information, you know that we're having to modify things. Same here when it comes to PowerPoint or Prezi or whatever it is, our presentation aids have got to modify. Okay. All right. So, have you seen a presentation aid something like this? I see these very, very frequently. And normally people are so proud of themselves because they've done them in sentence format, and they've not made it quote unquote too busy. But I would say that this is way too busy. So, I'm going to come back here to you, and I'm interested. Do you feel like maybe, you know, this is too busy? How you feeling here? I don't have video on, Joe. I just have audio. I'm not sure why you're not getting audio. But again, so for those of you that are not having audio, don't worry. Um, uh, I will have all of this in video form, so I will still be able to get this to you. Don't worry, don't worry, don't worry. Okay. Yeah, so thanks, Aaron, for popping in on that. That's just overwhelming, right? Does it make your brain go like, ugh? Like it's just exhausting when you see that. It's way too much text, and we do this a lot. And I'm not really 100% sure why we do this, other than it comes down to feeling like people are going to actually ever read it again. So this is the one that I would say, if you run onto, we'll just use the Arsenal because I speak on Redstone Arsenal a lot, and you have someone who is a higher up who doesn't really have time to listen but wants to be able to review that information in the future. They want it in this particular format, but it's just too much. Your brain can't handle it. And when we're designing presentations, we want people to go, ah, right? That people go, oh, yeah, this is good. But not that they go, oh, this is too much information. I'm overwhelmed. So Kurt makes an excellent point here. He says, depends on presenting or for information. I don't like PowerPoint that looks like this when I'm sitting in and listening, but sometimes I need the version of that. So here's what I want you to start thinking about. When you're designing your PowerPoints, and you know that you have somebody that's going to be there that has to have it written out, or they're going to freak out later on. What I would suggest doing is starting your design with these style PowerPoints, okay? Where you've got all the sentences, you've got the bullet points, very few graphics, everything is content, content, content. Now, I still want you to keep one idea at a time, and we'll talk about this more as we go through on the PowerPoint. But start off with doing something like this, okay? Then what you need to do is take that version, save it, and print it. Send that to whoever is going to print it for it to be handed out later on, okay? But then what I want you to do is when it comes time to present, I want you to implement all of the things I'm going to teach you in the second half of this. So you're going to take those base layer ideas and you're going to edit them down. So what this will allow you to do is when you're presenting, you can hit the highlights that you are actually the most interested in while not neglecting all the information. So what's possible now is that when you present, you can say, if you want to read more about this, you can go to page 7 of the PowerPoint handout and get more in depth on this. PowerPoint's job is to function like a appetizer. Its job is to suck you in so that you want to learn more. And if you are giving everybody tons and tons of content, they won't be sucked in to ever read that piece of paper again anyway. So your job is to keep them somewhat entertained and informed on the most important parts and then give them the content still. You're editing backwards is what I want you to think about. Okay. So do all of your information and then you're going to use the elements we're going to talk about in the last part of this presentation to bring that down and edit it. Okay. All right. So we want to move away from this. But if you're going to write, if you have to have the handout like Kirk was talking about before, then it's fine for you to do this. But I don't want you to stand up and present with it looking like this. Okay. So let's talk about the things that I want you to change about your presentations. The first thing I need you to understand is this. You only need to have one idea per slide. Okay. So here's the problem. We were told in corporate America, and really what's happened is you've got people who are making decisions that don't really understand a lot about how the brain works. So the problem is this. When you go through more than one idea on a PowerPoint slide, people can't hold that. And so what happens is that we told people that they needed to limit the number of slides that we had, and that way people wouldn't get overwhelmed. But here's the problem. When someone says, okay, Aaron, you can only have 15 slides, our tendency is to take, let's assume we've got 40 slides that we would have done. Our tendency is to take that 40 and cram it in to the 15 slides, which makes the slides completely and totally overwhelming for everyone who is viewing. So it's not about the number of slides. It's about the number of things on the slide, okay? It's never been about the number of slides. Never. That is not what overwhelms your brain. It's been about the number of things that are on the slide. So let's just use an example. If you have ever, and I know that you guys have done this before, if you've ever been on a plane or a bus or a train, then you probably got something very much like what you see on your screen right now, a ticket. And what's interesting is that we compulsively look at this thing. We look at it over and over and over and over again. And there's actually research that shows from the time that you get in line, like when they call your section, to the time that you actually sit in your seat, on average, we'll look at that number of our seat 7 times. Okay, so here's the thing. If we have to look at a number that we're going to sit in 7 times in order to remember it, then we are not smart enough to hold this much information in our heads. Okay. Unless you are a savant, you are not getting all of this content in the exact same way. So you want to stay away from overwhelming people with more than one idea. One idea per slide. Okay. Everybody got that? We'll move on to the next thing. One idea is the first tip. The second thing is this. I want you to use more photographs and less words. Start to pull back on the amount of words that are on your screen. Um, this is super, super important, and we have a tendency to not do this. And part of it is because many people are afraid that if they snatch up a picture off the internet, for example, that's going to come back and cause them retribution. But there are all kinds of programs I'm going to show you in just a little bit where you can get pictures along with your subscription. So there's no reason for you to shy away from photographs just because you're worried about snatching a Google picture. Don't do that. Don't snatch a Google picture. Use something like HaikuDeck or Canva, which I'm going to show you in a little bit, that has pictures that are built in, or use free images. But don't just steal things off the internet. Regardless, here's what's interesting. We can hold a picture in our head for significantly longer and in a more impactful way than we can words. So we are going to be able, you're going to think about this slide for much longer than you are going to think about this slide. Okay. Because the picture paints 1,000 words. So more photos, less words. So let me just give you an example here. This is a great picture. Let's say you want to talk about all the awesome things that have been happening and that you're really happy with what happened in quarter 1. You can say, we are thrilled in the blah, blah, blah department about all the awesome things that have happened in quarter 1. You don't have to write those words on the slide. You can just show a photograph like this and it will get the point across. So find ways to visually represent this. This actually comes from a concept that's called redundancy principle. The theorists are Sweller and Meyer. That's their names. And here's what they say: if you if you continue, if you have words on your slide, and you speak those words while those words are on your slide, what the people will actually remember is nothing, right? So it's a weird 1 + 1 = nothing. The redundancy of having the words on the slide and you talking simultaneously is going to make it where people can't remember anything. So I'm just going to take a little break here and see if that's something that you have encountered in the future. I mean, or in the future, in the past, have you noticed that if there are a lot of words on the back of a slide, that you will continuously get sucked into the slide and stop listening to the person? Do you just tone out completely? Have you noticed this? Give me a little comment over here on the corner. Yes, from a Justine. And here's what's interesting, Justine. Like the more words that are there, the more I just shut down. Especially, it's like your brain thinks, I have to pick one. I have to pick one of these things. And it's easier for me to read the words. But if there's a whole lot of words, I'm just going to shut it all down anyway. So don't overwhelm people with lots of words. Photos can do something in a way that you can't. Okay. All right. So let's move on to the next thing. The first thing that we talked about was one idea per slide. And the second big tip was more photos, less words. Let's move on to the next big tip. I want you to avoid sentences. And again, this comes down to that redundancy principle. Sweller and Meyer's idea of if you're talking while you're saying sentences, people remember nothing. So bullet points should be 3 to 4 words. It's just enough to spark the cementing in the minds of those visual learners. Okay. And that's what you're trying to do is just get it in their brain. 3 or 4 words. You don't need the any of the articles, the and, are. You don't need to have a lot of prepositions. You don't need to have a lot of descriptor words. You don't need all that. Make the main thing, right? So here we are. Let's just use this slide here. We've got a picture that shows redundancy, right? You're seeing something on multiple angles. 1 + 1 = 0. That's the main thing I want you to get. And then I have the redundancy principle, Sweller and Meyer. I don't need to write any sentences, you guys, about the redundancy principle by Sweller and Meyer was designed in 1984, and it was there to help people understand redundancy and blah, blah. Stop that. You don't need that. This is just to cement the idea of the word redundancy, which, Lord, I hope I've spelled right. Get that word into people's brains. Okay. So bullet points are your friend. Use bullet points and fewer words. Okay. While we're here, I'm going to re-hit something that I hit in the very first PowerPoint presentation that we did. The first webinar, we talked about delivery. If you've missed that, go back and watch that because it really talks about key delivery skills that will help you. Again, I'm going to restate this. PowerPoint or Prezi or whatever Visme, whatever program you are running in the back of your slides, on slides, that is for the audience. It's not for you. Its job is not to be your notes ever. Hit you with that again. PowerPoint slides job is not to be your notes. Your notes job is to be your notes. So you're like, well, I won't be able to remember everything that I'm going to say by only having a few bullet points and a few words. That's not its job anyway. Okay. So maybe you design in your notes to have more of a tip off, but that's not the job of your PowerPoint. Okay. Then the fourth big tip I've got is I want you to start switching from dark backgrounds and light to dark backgrounds and lighter words. Okay, guys, this is insane. So PowerPoint's template is designed with white backgrounds. And here's the problem. What happens most of the time when you are watching any kind of presentation? Chances are they're going to turn the lights down in that room. And so what's going to happen is you, the speaker, is going to stand in primarily the dark. And then if you've got white on your PowerPoint slide, then what happens is it becomes the biggest and most interesting thing that's on this that's up there. So people are going to look at that over and over and over and over again, regardless of how interesting you are as a presenter. They'll get sucked back into that over and over and over again. So going for darker backgrounds is going to make a bigger impact if you're presenting live. Okay. Now, if you're not presenting live, then you have a lot more to go off of, because as you can see, when you're sitting here at your computer, you can see things a whole lot better, a whole lot cleaner. But if you're going live, as much as possible, have a dark background with light words. Okay. So just here's another example of things that people do horribly wrong. I'm going to give you a second to read this. Okay, so I hope you got the point here. Don't do this. Okay, so listen. If you refuse to listen to me and use dark backgrounds and light words, at the very least, teach yourself this rule. If it is a primary color, okay, if it is a primary color, I must use a white or a yellow, right? And yellow very sparingly, because again, it's going to look crazy. So I need to use a white, maybe a light gray, something like that. Primary colors, white or yellow. Pastel colors, black or navy. Okay. You want to stop putting primary colors on top of primary colors because of exactly what it says here in this slide, that it will look like it's vibrating. Okay. I'm going to get off of that because otherwise you'll obsessively read it, just exactly like we've been talking about before. So be careful, be careful, be careful of that. The next thing is this: people pay attention to signaling colors: red, yellow, green. You naturally see these things a whole lot more frequently than any other colors. When something is red, you have an emotion. It either makes you feel powerful or it makes you feel scared. Yellow makes you feel more cautious, or for a lot of people, makes them feel queasy. It's an interesting one for you. Nauseated. A lot of people just don't respond to yellow at all. And hey, green means go, right? So whenever you have more of these colors out there, people are going to pay more attention to them. So that's the problem, is that if you've got a whole lot of these on your slide and you're in a dark room, and you're not in a bright red or a bright green or a bright yellow, what are people naturally going to do? They're going to look at your presentation aid over and over and over and over and over and over again. Okay. So we don't want that. We do not want to put ourselves in competition. So using like what I've used here, almost a chalkboard color, dark gray, a solid black, a navy blue, things like that are always going to do better in drawing people's attention back to the speaker and putting you in less competition with the audience itself. So just kind of looking here. Oh yeah, Matt, so Matt's bringing up something really interesting, and he says here, plus red green color blindness is very common. Very common, Matt. That's an excellent point. And so we have to understand that there's a variety of people who are there. Don't don't put don't put yourself in competition with things. Keeping adults' attention is hard enough, you guys. Don't make your PowerPoint be in competition with you. Wrong. Okay. So signaling colors. What color are we going to have on the back? Show me real quick that you're still here. You're still paying attention. Backgrounds we're going to look for are going to be what? Give me some examples of colors you're going for. Dark gray. Yay, Katie. Dark gray. Dark colors. Navy. Dark gray. Dark blue. Yay. Okay. If you didn't get anything else, I think you got that one. That is a weird game changer. People will like all of a sudden feel like your presentations are better if you are in dark colors. Okay, let's move on to the next big trick. Again, I'm going to hit you with a quick review. The big idea was to do only one idea per slide. The second was more photos, less words. The third was avoiding sentences. The fourth is dark backgrounds and light words. Okay, so let's go on to tip number 5. Size matters. How big something is on the screen makes us naturally pay attention to that thing more. This is another huge flaw in the way that PowerPoint slides are designed, naturally designed. They're designed white with a title. Okay. Now let me ask you, how often is the title of your PowerPoint slide the most important thing on the slide? I would say very, very rarely for the vast majority of people is what's on the slide the title's not the most important thing. We do that just to help that super linear thinker. So let me just kind of give you an example here. And I've got these examples, these next two examples come from a fellow named JD Phillips, and he is just a fantastic speaker if you want to learn more about presentation aids. But so let me just give you an example here. So here's what a typical PowerPoint slide, assuming that you are being nice and doing what Kristen told you, and that's giving it a nice black background. So I want you to look right now. Your eyes continuously keep getting sucked up into reading title of slide, don't they? Over and over and over again. But watch this. Now where do your eyes go? They fall down into important thing 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, and not title slide. Your eyes keep getting sucked down to the important thing. Sucked right back up into title of the slide. Sucked right back down to important thing. The largest thing on the slide is the most important thing. So if that's a photograph, it should be the largest. If it is a certain word, if it's the numbers. So for example, when I did 1 + 1 = 0, that was the largest thing on the slide because that's what I want you to pay the most attention to. The biggest thing on the slide is the most important thing on the slide. Okay. Again, this is one of those weird things that tricks the brain that will make people immediately feel like your presentations are better than everybody else's presentation because they'll know where to look. And you want them looking at the important thing, not looking at the title of the slide, which is very, very rarely the most important thing. Okay. All right, let's hit you with the next one. And this is the big mama, and we'll have a discussion about it after this. On your slide, remember when I told you before that it's never been an issue of how many slides, it's of the number of slides. It's always been about how much stuff is on each slide. So here's the thing. We have learned that the perfect number of things on a slide is 6. You shouldn't go more than 6 at any given time. So again, I'm going to use another great example from JD Phipps. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to throw some balls here on your screen, and I want you to count the balls. And even though I'm not there with you, I still want you to be participatory like a kinesthetic learner would be. And I want you to just nod your little head when you've counted all the balls. Are you ready? On your mark, get set, go. All right. Got it? How many balls are there? There should be 10 balls on that screen, right? 10. So here's the thing. If your brain works relatively normally, then that should take you approximately 2 seconds. 2 seconds to process the counting of 10 things on a given slide. Okay. So I'm going to show you the next set of balls. See if that changes things. You ready? On your mark, get set, go. Right. Okay. Should have been a little bit faster that time. There's 7 balls that are here on the slide. 7 balls, and that should have, on average, taken you about 1.2 seconds. So again, from 10, here we go, guys. From 10 items to 7 items is quite a big gap, right? 0.8. I mean, that's significant amounts of time. Not really, but when you add it all up, it is. Ready for the last one? Here we go. On your mark, get set, go. All right, you should have already nodded your head. Most people know that that's 5. Now, here's what the difference is. In this, it takes 0.2 seconds. 0.2 seconds. You lose a second. Look, guys, from 7 to 5 takes you a whole second less. Okay. So here's what's interesting. Do you think that your space-saving brain is going to spend 500% more resources trying to figure out some weird slide that's covered with just tons and tons of information? Or are they going to conserve energy, and the less things that are on the slide, the more energy that they're going to spend paying attention? Our brains work this way for a reason, okay? So if we know 7 takes 1.2 and we know that 5 takes 0.2, what we want is some cognitive tension there in the middle, okay? So we want that 6 is that perfect number. It's not enough that makes your brain overwhelmed, but it's not enough that you just see. It keeps your brain working. This is the same sort of idea as what I teach. Well, if you've ever listened to me speak, I always talk about the fact that it's not that I talk fast, it's that people listen slowly. And the reason that I say that is this: you can keep, especially in adults, attention for a much longer period of time if you are talking quickly. If you ever talk to somebody who talks really slowly, it's brutal. Like you sort of want to punch them in the throat. So people that talk more quickly can keep your attention for longer periods of time because it keeps your brain active, keeps your brain working. Same thing here. So 6 items is going to be ideal, okay? You're not going to go more than 6 items if at all possible. And if you hit more than 6, then you're going to create another slide. So let's just assume you have to have a toddler, you're going to die. That's one. You have to have a picture because you know that those visual people love it. That's 2. Okay. Then how many more bullet points should you have? The answer to that is 4. You should have 4 bullet points. If you're going to have a picture and a title, then you should have no more than 4 bullet points. And those bullet points should not be in sentences. Remember what we talked about before? All right. So I'm curious, what do you think about this particular exercise? What do you think that this is something that you can begin applying? This idea of the magic number 6? Lots of yeses. It really is. It's a game changer. And it's one of those things. What you want, you guys, is when you get up to give a presentation, you want people to be excited about it. And so if you are stimulating their brain in the right way, they're going to be more excited about whatever it is that you have to say. 6 is the ideal number. Okay. 3 is a magic number. So 6 is a double magic number. All right. Go back and rework this. And what's so funny is some of you are looking at your presentations right now and you're like, holy cow, I'm going to have to rework everything. But this is one of those things that will really, really set you apart if you begin to implement these things. So, again, just to sort of hit you with the highlights, the 6 main things you need to know is 1 idea per slide, more photos, less words, avoid sentences. Remember that size matters. The biggest thing should always be the most important thing. And a limit of 6 items, no more than 6 items on any given slide. All right. So ideally, you would have a presentation aid that would look something more like this, right? That is a little bit of a sentence, but it's just enough to keep people's brains engaged. You're only working at 4, right? And how many times can you really read that sentence before people are like, oh, okay, I can't read this anymore? It's not like a super complicated 15 word sentence. So something like this is more like what you're looking for. And then what you would do is you would highlight how glaciers are created with your mouth, right? And if there's maybe 3 or 4 key points that you want, then on the next slide, you would have 3 or 4 words that you wanted them to remember, okay? All right. So next thing I want to do is talk to you about, assuming that you're not doing a PowerPoint. We're going to switch gears because there's lots of ways to do visual aids. Let's assume that you want to do something that is 3D. So here's what's awesome. 3D things always are able to keep people's attention for longer periods of time. And in particular, if you have any kind of statistic that's hard for people to wrap their brains around, if you can represent that visually in a 3D manner, it will always go over better than your chart or your PowerPoint slide or whatever it is. Okay. So examples would be things like pounds. We can't usually conceptualize pounds. Once you get past millions of dollars, we can't grab it. Ounces, anything in the metric system. If you're in the US and things are normally done in a metric. You need to be able to show us in a normal, I don't know if normal is the right word, but in a way that most of us will have learned. So when you can represent that, things are always going to be better. So I'm going to give you a great example here. And of course, I don't want you to see me live right now because I look a hot mess because we are redoing our house. But um, what I had a student that did a presentation, and the presentation was on how much sunscreen. It was a persuasive presentation about how much sunscreen you should actually have. And everybody knows that they're supposed to wear sunscreen, and so she knew she couldn't just beat a dead horse about it. And so she said, the problem is that most people don't know how much sunscreen they're supposed to be applying at any given time. So she pulled out the statistics from, skin cancer surveys, and it shows that Americans are supposed to, regardless of skin color, you guys, it doesn't matter what your skin color is, in order to be fully protected, you should have on a minimum of 1 ounce of suntan lotion for every 90 minutes that you're on in the sun. Okay. So 1 ounce covering your entire body for every 90 minutes in the sun. Now, I don't know about you, but I can't grab 1 ounce out of my brain. But here we go. So, what she smartly did was she brought a shot glass right at 1 ounce so we could understand how much that is. And then she got some suntan lotion and she poured that in, and that made a huge difference in us understanding how much an ounce is. And there are those of you that are sitting there right now and you're like, man, I'm not sure I use an ounce the whole day that I'm at the beach. But here's what's interesting: the second thing she did was bring a 4 ounce bottle of suntan lotion like this. Okay. And so what she said was, so for the average day at the beach, each person should be using approximately 4 ounces. That whole bottle you should be using to really protect yourself from skin cancer. Now, here's the thing. In this one, the odds, you guys, of anybody going and actually using this whole 4 ounces per person on their body is pretty much insane. But that wasn't what her goal was. Her goal was just to make you put more on than what you're currently putting on, right? So what she did was take an extreme statistic and show you in a way to hopes it moves the needle a little bit. Okay. So any kind of time that you can show people in an extreme. So let's say, for example, you're down at Kennedy Space Center and you're talking about the difference in prices on one project versus another project. Being able to show that in something like Monopoly money or in coins, in marbles, being able to visually show that is going to make a huge difference in whether people can grab it, especially if it's in the millions. Okay. The other thing that's really interesting about anything like this is when you have a 3D aid, if you cover it, people are immediately more riveted with whatever your presentation is. So there's this great study that I read about a public speaking teacher, and he was trying to prove that presentation aids make a difference. And what he did was he had two classes where he taught identical information back to back, a mix of students. So it wasn't like, that one group was a whole lot more intelligent than the other. Mix of students, two groups back to back. And so what he did was every day for the semester, for the first class, he brought a watermelon. He took the watermelon, set it on the desk, and then proceeded to give the presentation. Okay. He never, ever talked about the watermelon. He just took it, set it on the side, and gave his lecture just like every other class. For the second class, he did not have the watermelon and he gave the lecture the exact same way as he did before for a semester. And what he did was track the scoring of of the students. And overwhelmingly, the first class got higher average grades than the second. Now, if I had to really get into that, I would say that a lot of this comes down to natural curiosity. That we look at that. If I was a student, I would spend every day being like, I better pay attention because today may be the day that they finally explain why they brought the watermelon to school every single day. But here's the thing, it works. It kept their brains engaged. So here's what's interesting. I'm not telling you to bring a watermelon to every presentation, but what I am saying is that if you have some sort of three-dimensional thing and you can set it up and then look, it's a model or anything like that, cover it until it's time for you to reveal it in your presentation. People will pay more attention to a mystery item, and they will pay more attention to your presentation because of that mystery item. And then when you reveal, you've got some beautiful flourish. But I'll just give you another good example. I had a student who Halo was really popular I don't understand Halo at all, but it was really popular. And so what he did was he was given a presentation, and he stood up um, uh, the game. Sorry, I can't grab that word on my head. Stood up the game on a little easel, covered it, gets up to start his presentation, does a great attention grabber, and he says, hey, today is more important than the 4th of July. And people were like, what? Like, it's super, 4th of July was super important. Today is more pivotal than 9/11. And everybody's like, what? Because they're young still. How could anything be more pivotal than 9/11? And then he takes the cover, he rips it off, and he says, today is the release of Halo 3. And everybody goes, wah, wah, right? And even though it was not, it's still having the reveal made us immediately more interested in anything he had to say the rest of the presentation. Sometimes it doesn't make sense to take 3D things with you, but if you can find a way to take a statistic and show it 3D, it will, hear me, will in your adult world always make a higher impact, because so few adults are willing to do this that if you do, you will make a huge, huge impact. Okay. So I'm going to scoot over here just to make sure that everybody's getting where we are. All right. The big thing I want to hit you with, and we've got just a few more minutes to get through this, and then we'll talk about questions, is videos. Okay. So we talked about PowerPoints. We talked about videos that make readers work. Sorry, we talked about 3D. Now we're going to talk about videos that make readers work. If you can have something where people really have to pay attention to the words along the way, it's going to go over better. Okay. Now, this is a great example of a video that makes people's brains work. I will tell you that for me personally, when I do this with adults, especially with a lot of older adults, they get frustrated with this because he moves, in my opinion, just a fraction too quickly from slide to slide. But I'm going to just give you a little example here of something that makes your audience work to keep them engaged. And you can design these to make it possible to keep people engaged for long periods of time on information that otherwise is not very interesting. Here we go. Okay, I'm going to stop you on this one, but just gives you an example. Your brain is working right now. Every time that you have to read as you're going through this, it makes your brain work, and they're able to put together some really interesting statistics. Some of them which might not have very interested you very much at all if it wasn't happening in such a visually stimulating way. So find videos. In particular, this is good. You want maybe 3 to 4 minutes maximum on any kind of video. And if it can say something in a more interesting way than you can say it, it's going to go over better. There's a great presenter out there. His name is Dustin Sandlin. He has a YouTube video channel that's called Smarter Every Day. If you have not heard of him, he's fantastic. But when he does his presentation, it is very, very video heavy. He basically tells you the high points of what he does by using past videos that he's done, visual demonstrations that give you a sort of ability to kinesthetically involve. So here's the thing. Right now, not only are you visually stimulated, but your brain is having to read when you were going through this, which gives it a bit of that kinesthetic. Okay. All right. So in our last 9 minutes, I am going to show you some different slides, different programs that you have got to go and look at. You will love. Okay. The first one is called Haiku Deck. I know that it will allow you to do Haiku Deck. There's the name of it right there. Haiku Deck. Um, that it will allow you to on a free account do one at a time, one of these setups at a time. One deck is what they call it at a time. But I want to kind of show you why I love Haiku Deck. I've got a pro one on mine, but it's because I use it very frequently. So, if you are one of those people that has a tendency to be very wordy when you give your presentations and write a whole lot of words, this is why I love Haiku Deck. It won't let you. So, let's assume we are going to do a presentation down at Kennedy Space Center. Let's start with let's see if I can find anything. Let's see if I can just go that way. See if it'll look it up for me. It might be mad at me now. Yeah. Oh, look at that. Okay. So, beautiful. Okay. So we're going to go, there's a beautiful background. We're going to do Kennedy. And then the name of me. So I'm Kristen Scroggin, and I would never present about these people, even though I love them amazingly. So did you see how very easily I was able to find a slide that worked for me? Now, here's what's really cool. Let's say that you're like, man, those letters are just a little too crazy. You can then pick a layout and you can adjust it in multiple ways to get you all the good things you want. Isn't that gorgeous? So let's go over here. Let's do cakes for my friend Erin. Let's do a different kind of slide. So let's do one here with cakes. Oh, that looks like something you would make, Erin. And then we're gonna, cakes. And you might say, I do white cakes, I do yellow cakes, I do chocolate cakes, right? Something like this. You get the gist of it. And I do yummy. Right? Everybody follow me on this? If you want to stay very visually stimulating with more photos, this is going to allow you to do it. I love this particular layout too. So notice how you can switch between them very easily. Make this go up and down. Erin rocks at cakes, right? Something like this. Everybody following me on what I'm doing here. So Haiku Deck allows you to really get some cool stuff, drag and drop. But here's what I love about them the most. All their pictures are free. So, I mean, you just can't beat that with a stick. Oh, I love that one. That's adorable, right? So I'm going to go over here and I'm going to give my title and I'm going to go over here and cakes, right? Everybody follow me? Haiku Deck, it's your buddy. You're going to love it. And it's worth it because it'll always make your presentations look prettier. Okay. The next one I want to kind of highlight to you is called Canvas. Canva. Canva. So the first one was Haiku Deck. I'm going to put this in the chat room for you. HaikuDeck.com was the first one, and this one is Canva.com. Okay, so I love me some Canva. So here's the thing. Regardless of how bad of a designer or how good of a designer you think you are, Canva can become your new best friend because Canva has the best templates for you to work with. You will absolutely love it. Now, again, you can get a free version of this. And you can pay for more photos or you can upgrade to a slightly higher end, but it is a game changer. So let's assume we're going to do a presentation. Let's just pick one like this. So here's what's so cool. See how it gives you all these different things for you to be able to work with. So let's say we're going to do business plan template. We're going to add a new page. We're going to talk about, right? So I want to come in here and change this to Q1 at Iron Mountain, right? Something like that. And then we know we don't want to have a lot of words, so we're going to get rid of this and we're going to say Kristen Scroggin, right? Something like this. So, okay, great. So I'm going to show Teresa, I'm going to show you real quick how to use these if you need to go into PowerPoint. So, template in PowerPoint. So my guess, Teresa, is that you have a standardized one that your company is having you use. So there's two ways that you can do this. The first is to literally cut and paste it. So for example, you've already got one that that's the layout that they like. And so I'm going to just use a Mac here. So with a Mac, you can just Control Alt Delete. But anyway that you can do capture. So what I would do is literally get that picture and then pick it up and drop it into my PowerPoint. Let's just use this as an example. Insert new slide. right? I'm going to pick it up and I'm going to lay it in here. Picture, online from file. Sorry, I know I'm moving super fast, so you can go back and look at this again later on. There it goes right there. And then that way, and I know that just for example, if you were at ERC, let's just use an example that you've got a specific one. So it's still going to have your red background, gray background, whatever it is, and your little ERC slogan over here. You're just going to adjust it based on that. So that's definitely one way that you can do it. Another way that you can do this is once you have downloaded all of your slides, you just hit this little download button here. And number one, please notice that it says PDF standard, so that makes it possible for you to print it later on, but you want them in pictures, so it's going to design it for you in pictures. La la la. And then you're just going to move that picture onto here, pull it up, and then you can just cut. I mean, you just would do it like a regular insert of a picture on a PowerPoint. Picture from file, recent. I don't know. I think it was probably this one. No. Anyway, desktop. Let me see if we did it there. Okay. Anyway, you get the point, and then you just insert in it that way. Okay. So you're just going to add that to on top of the program that you're already working with, in my opinion, if at all possible. I hope that helps you. Yep. Okay. Fabulous. Love it. Love it. Love it. Okay. So Canva, you've seen a little bit of that, but I just want to show you, a few more things on Canva. Canva just really makes it so easy for you to find things that you're going to like. You can switch the colors very easily too. So let's say you like this particular style, but you don't like this, these colors, right? So this one's even animated. You see how cool that is? And we don't want to leave it on there forever because remember, it'll be a giant distraction for us. But let's say we want to move that to an orangey color. Nope, that's ugly red. And I want to get rid of the effect. Right. None effect, right? So you can change all kinds of things here. You can get in there and change that number to 10%. You can make all kinds of changes based on what you need to do. So you will love it, love it, love it, love it, love it. Okay. Last little thing I want to show you is, and this is one of my favorite things, you guys, it is a site called Fiverr. Fiverr is like the unknown best way for you to get cheap stuff in the planet and not do it yourself. So you've heard of the term of starving artists? There are so many of them, literally across the world, that will happily design your PowerPoint for you. So you can take that PowerPoint that you've done that's garbage at this point in time and send it over to them and have them rework it for you. All right, awesome. So I'm just going to do that's sort of I like this one, this modern and clean one. So for $30, basically, they'll take it and they'll rework whatever your stuff is into a PowerPoint that's going to be amazing. But the key word you're looking for here is unlimited revisions. Okay. You want to be able to change this over and over and over again. And woo, you can, and they're just so much better. This might be a little bit of a problem for those of you that have problems with security, right? So you don't want to send the ones. What you would do is you would ask for a minimum of 3 blank slides that you could put in whatever your secure information was, and then you just copy and duplicate those. But listen, these people can do anything. I'll just give you an example of one of the things that I had them do not too long ago. I had them make this puppet video for me for, I kid you not, $10.
Hello, my friends. I'm Professor Hans von der Puppet. I'm so excited to be here today to introduce my colleague, Kristen Scroggin. If you're over 56 years old, then you need me, an old man in a tweed jacket, to vouch for this young whippersnapper female and the fact that she knows her stuff.
Right? So a video, you have a puppet video. I also had, remember we saw that video before where it was very infomercially, right? I did this one, and this person did it for $15. Right? So you get the idea. There are people that are out there. If this whole stylizing thing is not your jam, there are people who are out there who can make your stuff look gorgeous. There's genuinely no reason to have crappy PowerPoints anymore. So I hope you have learned something today. I'm going to stay right here and see if you guys have any questions. I know it's right at 12:05, so anybody that needs to disappear, you absolutely can. But I'm going to stay right here and take any of your questions that I can help you get even better at presentations. Remember that this will again happen in video form that you will be able to access on www.genwy.com. I hope you learned a lot. Y'all, please apply this. It will be a game changer for you, and you will stand out going the right way, just like that fish. So have an awesome day. Next webinar we do is bridging generational gaps. So for those of you that have friends, for example, that have never heard this and you want them to hear it, bring them in your office and let them come and hear that. Okay. I'm going to hang right here for anybody that has questions. Otherwise, you guys have an awesome day and wash your hands. Okay, well, if you do have any questions in the future, you can just shoot me an email at kristen@genwy.com, and I will be happy to help you any way that I can. I hope you have an amazing day, and I will see you back here next month for the next webinar. Have a great day, everybody.